Welcome to CivilNet's weekly program, Turkey Over the Mountain. We bring you the latest news from Turkey, from our own particular vantage point here in Armenia, and by doing so, try to understand the events shaping our region. On the national holiday marking the founding of the Turkish Republic, a new presidential palace was inaugurated in Ankara by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. While controversial is perhaps one of the most commonly used words when describing Erdogan, the opening of the presidential palace, or Ak Saray, meaning White House, has left many wondering the meaning of it. The building is said to have cost about $600 million, while original projections were at about $350 million, and the palace boasts 1,000 rooms. There are plans to build a new 4-minaret mosque and a conference hall for 2,000 people. It is bigger than the Kremlin, the White House, and even Buckingham Palace. Putting aside the lavishness and extravagance of the building, there are also bunkers, tunnels, deaf rooms with no electrical outlets to avoid attempts at bugging, and an underground war room. The grounds of the new palace is set on over 22 acres of land, previously known as the Atatürk Forest Farm, which Mustafa Kemal Atatürk had created in 1925 and donated to the state in 1937. It functioned as a pioneering model for modern agriculture. Hundreds of trees were cut down to make way for the building, which has outraged environmentalists in Turkey. Since 2007, there have been over 33 court injunctions to halt the construction of the palace. However, in March of this year, a defiant Erdogan said, "No one can prevent the completion of this building. If they are powerful enough, let them come and demolish it." And from our vantage point here in Armenia, the exorbitance and lavishness aside, the new presidential palace, which has replaced the Çankaya presidential palace, sits on lands seized from the Kasabians, an Armenian family. Ohannes Kasabian was an Armenian jeweler and merchant whose vineyard and house were confiscated after his family fled Ankara to escape the Armenian genocide. When Mustafa Kemal Atatürk saw the property in 1921, he purchased it and turned it into the Çankaya presidential palace. Now, joining me from Skype from Istanbul to talk about the presidential palace is Andrew Finkel of the independent media platform P24. Andrew, thank you for joining us, and tell us about the fallout from the opening of this building in Turkish society.
Well, I think the government has a real public relations disaster on its hands. We're used to thinking of Prime Minister Erdogan, now President Erdogan, as being the master of Turkish politics, of having this incredible knack of addressing the real concerns and thoughts of his people. And often, it confuses people that he says things and yet his popularity increases. Well, in this particular instance, I think the fact that there's been so much money spent on such a lavish project is, I think, sort of really concerned people, and I think his spin doctors are having quite a lot of trouble sort of covering their tracks.
Oftentimes we've been hearing Erdogan and the AKP party talking about this new Turkey, and yet when we see this building, it seems like he wants to return to some imperial empire, such as the Ottoman Empire. But is it also a reflection of his particular political aspirations in the region?
Well, I think he when he speaks of the new Turkey, his new Turkey is a Turkey which commands the respect of his region, and therefore he needs a sort of presidential palace. It's not just this huge leviathan in Ankara, but he's also building a vast mosque in Istanbul, a vast residence in Istanbul. I mean, he's building everywhere, and apparently this palace isn't even big enough. They're going to build this huge residence inside the ground. So, it's what he depicts it as a sort of projection of Turkey's power and place in the world. But I think a lot of people are sort of scratching their heads in a slightly embarrassed way and saying, well, this is the sort of thing Ceausescu would have done, not a sort of modern go-ahead Turkey.
Right. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for telling us how the reactions have been in Turkey about the palace. And, from our vantage point here in Armenia, of course, we also understand that those grounds originally belonged to the Kasabian family, who were forced to flee after the genocide from Ankara to Constantinople, at the time Istanbul, and then on to Canada. So there's a lot of issues aside from how Turkish society perceives it, how Armenians perceive it, and how the world perceives it. Thank you for joining us and helping us to understand a little bit more about Erdogan's ambitions and aspirations.
Pleasure.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said, quote, that the new Turkey should express itself with something new. And yet, when there is no acknowledgement of the past, when old crimes have not been resolved, it is difficult to say how Turkey will indeed be able to move forward. Stay with CivilNet.